we've now gone through auto levels and hue, saturation, lightness. And now we're going to look at another tool, which we use in Boris, from Boris Continuum Complete. It's called color balance. I can drag it into my plane, and this has got basically 3 controls: red, green, blue, RGB, and also the pixel chooser. And we've seen the pixel chooser before, the way that we use it on mats, and it's pretty easy to do a mat. One of the things I want to say here is I'm running on a portable computer, i7 4-core, and these controls are responding pretty well. But for a second, let's just go back and play this particular piece of film. And I also want you to notice I got this on half the resolution. I don't have it on full. Of course, if I put it on full, it's going to have the resolution, but you're going to see my response here. Guess what? I got these controls that isn't playing. As part of the guide, it's really based on 2 factors: the amount of RAM that you have and also how fast your processor is. And we have 8 gigs of RAM on this portable computer that we'll do some lessons later on a faster computer, and you'll see the response. As you add more of these effects and you have it on full control, it'll play for a couple frames, and then you're going to notice it stops playing. So that's why that we talk about having these high-end graphics cards, etc. If it stops playing, that you can go to half or even a quarter resolution. On a quarter, usually this stuff will play, but it's blurry and you can't necessarily tell what's going on here. A lot of times I use the half, which is in Adobe Premiere Pro. And if you don't use Adobe Premiere Pro, you can look at your particular application the way you do it so that you can get these things to run. But even on half, it's kind of playing okay. But then after a couple things, it starts to slow down. Clearly, that's why we talk about speed and capability, etc. And really, when I'm doing some of these color corrections, I really want to have it on full, because that's going to show me exactly what we're doing here. Over on the prior lesson where we were using mats and hue, saturation, lightness, I only wound up doing it to the second splice clip. I didn't do it to the first. And I'm going to show you something cool that you can do in Adobe. Once again, if we go back and forth, if you move this slider dial, you can see that the corals are more yellow and brighter in here. Well, I can come in and just click on my color balance, because this was relatively the same scene, and highlight that second hue, saturation, the lightness control we did that affected the coral and not the water. And I can right click and say copy and just come over to the prior clip and now just go edit, paste. And what happens is when I go back to that clip now, in the first one, guess what? I got the same effects that happen. So that's one of the things that you can do with these effects. You can copy them between the various clips, and if you have a setting you like, you can copy it over to where you had done a prior slice, because on some of these clips I may wind up doing 10 or 15 mats, so I don't want to correct one. I'll just take it and then copy it across the rest, and then I can take that particular control and then once again adjust it the way I want to do it. So on here, maybe I'll adjust the hue a little. We'll see what, wow, look at that. When I do that hue, look what happens to that coral. I mean, like I said, the more I play around with these controls, the more amazing things that I just learn all the time about what I'm able to do with it. And I just did a -5, and wow, I really made some of those reds really pop. That's something, once again, it comes down to your artistic side and what's visually appealing to you. In a lot of ways that we're acting as painters here and making a determination as an artist about how do you really believe that this stuff looks underwater, and what's the amazing part of it. And that's where these controls allow you to look at those type of items. So now when we're in here that we brought in, I'm going to go back to the clip that I brought in, or I'll just bring color balance right in here. So within here now that we're affecting the red, green, blue, and what happens is I can start ramping up these controls, and I'm going to wind up getting overall effect of the redness as part of the clip. So let's say that I want to wind up setting it on 9. And let's go in and turn off the color balance, and you can see it just brings out just slightly a little more red. Just a little more red, but that's affecting everything again because we haven't laid down a mat. I'm going to adjust the red or green balance, or I'm going to adjust the blue balance. Let's see what happens here if we adjust the blue balance. We're getting an effect across the whole spectrum, and that's not what we really want to do. I'm just going to cut this out because I want to start clean. I'm going to bring color balance back in, and we're going to go back in the pixel chooser. And we're going to say, let's view our chosen pixels. And once again, everything is white. We'll come into our pixel chooser, and you'll actually see how fast I'm going to wind up doing this. It's really, really quick. I'm going to do my blue channel that worked for us on this particular scene, threshold. I'm going to come into my black. I'm going to draw my matte, and we all know about matting now. I'm going to create my little separation until I have leakage. Like if I go too far, everything turns black, which means I'm not going to affect anything. This looks pretty good to me. And then once again, we're going to use that invert command. So when we're going to do the red, we are not going to wind up affecting the water because we think our watercolor is really good and really cool. So I'm going to go back to my on button to see what these particular effects are. And now let's see what happens when we wind up ramping up these reds. Voila, I'm getting some red effect in the coral, but it's not affecting my water. And look what's going on. It's amazing. Once again, another amazing effect. Now I'm affecting one of the color spectrums, but only down on the coral. Sometimes I may adjust the green down a little, depending upon what I want to do, but that can create a purple tone. So you have to be a little careful if you ramp up your reds a little. And if you, once again, if you go to the extremes, you can see what this is doing. It's really bringing the greens. Sometimes on green, I may ramp it down to like a -7 and boom. And let's turn that off. Let's look at it again. It's giving a slight little reddish purple tone to it. It may be ramped up a little too high. Let's just bring this down to about, sometimes I do 10 on red and -10. And let's turn this control on and off again. And wow, look at that. Just brought it out, and it was so fast. I did this matte so fast, and I'm sitting here running on a i7 4-core portable computer with 8 gigs of RAM. We're getting a pretty good response. So once again, let's go back and turn off all of our controls. Here's our original film. This is probably what a lot of people have. And you come up and you go, what happened? What happened to my film? So once again, here's auto levels. Use saturation where we affected the water. Use saturation where we had an inverse matte to affect the coral. And then this is where we added a little more red back into what happened. And I'm going to bring my video scope down and now turn this back on. And we're getting a view of what's going on with this particular video scope. Now, what you have to do on the video scope is going to show what's happened with the colorization of everything which is above it. So in other words, if you put this video scope and move it up to here, it's going to have a difference in it. And we don't necessarily want that, but I'm just going to wind up taking this out for now. So like you'll notice, in fact, let's go back to the video scope. It took some time to process because we are on a relatively slower computer. And you can see now as we're adding more controls, it's not really going as fast. When we go to 1/2, maybe that'll kind of help us. But I'm going to leave the RGB. And if I take this video scope that we're looking at it right now, and look what happens if I move it only to between auto levels, and look how that changed. So you got to be careful here when you're doing the video scope in that it's going to reflect everything that's above it. So if I bring it above auto levels, once again, that's our original colors where they were at. If I bring it down below, now all of a sudden that we have a better spread going on between our colors. That's something I wanted you to basically realize what's going on there. I think it's kind of interesting that this is going to show where it's at based on the other controls. So clearly we've spread the colors out now better. And as you change this color balance on the red, green, and blue, if you had it across the whole screen, it would really wind up adjusting it. Now, a lot of people, they take a different approach and they bring up the video scope and then they'll bring up the color balance and they adjust the red, green, and blue so that they're even across all three. Let's go in here. We have everything turned off. And now if I go into my video scope and I turn my color balance back on and I wind up adjusting these colors, a lot of people wind up getting them to where they completely match before they actually wind up starting. You know, something I think I'm going to wind up adding that as an additional lesson that will show that that's a procedure you can wind up doing before you get started, is getting these three levels to match up. But I'll just go ahead and turn all of our stuff back on again, and bada bing, bada bang, because I'm from Vegas, it's great. So we've now gone through some of these controls you can wind up using. We looked at auto levels. We've looked at BCC U saturation for the water. We've looked at how to use an invert mat for the U saturation, the lightness, and we've looked at the color balance, and now come in and pop some additional reds, but restrict it to one particular spectrum. Clearly our film has come a long ways since we started these procedures. No one wants this and you don't want it, and relatively quickly, and you can wind up doing these corrections. In fact, you can do these corrections in less than 3 minutes. If I wasn't given a video tutorial, I could do this correction in less than 3 minutes. That's what color balance is about, that you can restrict it to the RGB spectrum. I encourage all of you to play around with this tool. It's a fantastic tool. And we'll go on to the next video lesson, which is going to be color correction.